Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Here, we embrace true femininity. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update.
I never thought my life could change so drastically in just one day. It all started when my wife, Amy, discovered my secret. My dirty little secret that I had been keeping from her for years. I am a crossdresser. I had always been fascinated by women's clothing and the feeling of wearing them, but I never had the courage to tell Amy about it. It wasn't that I was ashamed of it, but I was afraid of her reaction. But one day, when I was getting ready for a business trip, I left my laptop open with some photos of me in women's lingerie. I didn't think much of it at the time, but little did I know that Amy would see those pictures and my hidden desires would be exposed. When I returned from my trip, Amy greeted me with a silent treatment. I could feel the tension in the air, but I had no idea what had caused it. As I tried to talk to her, she would give me one-word answers or completely ignore me. It wasn't until we were in bed that she finally confronted me about the pictures. I could feel my heart racing and my palms getting sweaty as she showed me the pictures on her phone. I expected her to be angry, to yell at me and demand an explanation. But instead, she sat there quietly, looking at me with a mix of confusion and sadness. "I never knew this side of you," she said softly. "Why have you been hiding it from me?" I didn't know what to say. I was too embarrassed and ashamed to admit that I enjoyed dressing up in women's clothing. But I couldn't keep it a secret from her any longer. "I've always been fascinated by women's clothing," I confessed, feeling my cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I know it may seem strange, but it's just something I enjoy doing in private." Amy's expression softened as she listened to me. I could tell she was trying to understand, but I could also see the disappointment in her eyes. "I can't believe you kept this from me for so long," she said, shaking her head. "But I can't ignore the fact that you have been lying to me." I knew she was right, and I felt terrible for hurting her. I had never wanted to keep secrets from her, but I was afraid of being judged and ridiculed. "I'm sorry, Amy," I said, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "I'll understand if you want to leave me." She looked at me with a mixture of emotions before reaching out to hold my hand. "I don't want to leave you, but I can't pretend like this didn't happen," she said. "I need some time to process everything." With those words, she got up and left the room, leaving me feeling alone and confused. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that my marriage was on the line. The next few days were filled with awkward silences and tense conversations. Amy couldn't seem to look at me without the disappointment and hurt showing in her eyes. I tried to talk to her and explain that it was just a part of me, but she couldn't accept it. One night, she came home from work with a large bag in her hand. She called me into the bedroom and told me to open the bag. As I pulled out the items, my eyes widened in shock. It was an assortment of women's clothing, bras, panties, skirts, and dresses. My heart was racing, and I could feel my cheeks flush with excitement. I spoke to a friend, and she suggested this as a way for me to understand your fascination with women's clothing, Amy said. "She told me to try and see things from your perspective." I couldn't believe it. Not only was Amy trying to understand me, but she was also willing to participate in it. From that moment on, we started to bond over our mutual interest in women's clothing. Our relationship began to heal, and I felt closer to Amy than I ever had before. But as we started to explore this new side of me, I couldn't help but feel guilty. I was enjoying it too much, and I knew that Amy was still trying to come to terms with it. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, she confronted me again. "I don't want to stop you from doing something that makes you happy, but I also can't shake this feeling of betrayal," she said, her voice filled with sadness. I knew she was right. I had betrayed her trust, and I needed to make it up to her. That's when she suggested a punishment, to put me in chastity. At first, I was taken aback. I couldn't imagine being stuck in a chastity device, but then she explained her reasoning. She wanted me to fully submit to her and let go of my desires for a while. It was a way for her to reclaim control and for me to show my commitment to her. I agreed, and the next day, we went shopping for a chastity device. As I put it on, I felt a mix of excitement and fear. Knowing that I would not be able to touch or pleasure myself for an unknown amount of time was a daunting thought. But as the days went by, I found myself becoming more and more submissive to Amy. She would tease me and taunt me, reminding me that she was in control of my pleasure. And as much as it frustrated me, it also turned me on. One day, Amy surprised me with a different kind of outfit, a French-made costume. She told me to put it on, and as I did, I felt a sense of acceptance and belonging. I had completely submitted to my wife, and she was slowly feminizing me. As weeks went by, our relationship transformed. I was no longer hiding who I was, and Amy had become more open-minded and accepting. We continued to explore this new dynamic in our marriage, and I couldn't be happier. I had never felt so good in my own skin, and it was all thanks to Amy. She had not only accepted me for who I was, but she had also helped me embrace my true self. I realized that true happiness comes from being true to yourself, and I was lucky to have a wife who helped me realize that. And even though I am still in chastity, I have never been more satisfied in my life. I have fully submitted to my wife, and she has become my mistress, a role that she wears with pride. I may have started as a crossdresser, but I have now fully embraced my femininity, and it's all thanks to my loving and supportive wife.